Stand by. Hey, flower friends. I am not in the right place here. Welcome to Ask a Flower Farmer. Sorry, y'all. I'm trying to fix over here on... Sorry, y'all. I'm trying to get to where I'm supposed to be over here on this other. Here we go. Stand by, y'all. You are at the right place. We're at Ask a Flower Farmer. And I am just getting it fired up over here on TikTok as well. So, flower friends, welcome to this week's Ask a Flower Farmer. You might notice I'm in a little different place than I usually am. I decided to come in here into the grow room just because it's warmer in here than it is out in our big studio out there. And Suzanne is working on the stage for the shows tonight, which are all about snapdragons, by the way. If you haven't ever caught the live gardening show, happens at 7 p.m. tonight on YouTube and 8 p.m. inside the shop app. But right now we are here at Ask a Flower Farmer. And what in the heck is that? That is where you can ask any question related to growing flowers, whether it's, snow and ice on cool flowers and row covers, to starting seeds, to the cut flower business, harvesting, conditioning, whatever you got, I'll do my best to try to give you an answer. So in Instagram, there's a little bubble with a question mark down at the bottom of your screen. That's where you need to put your questions so they don't fly away from me as people's names are on here. And so post your questions. And if you're on TikTok, just post it in the comments and just put a question mark at the head of your question so I'll recognize it when I go to scroll back through. So first off, let's talk about a little bit of excitement that's been happening here in the last hour. So my Flower Farmer Club, we do a weekly meetup called the Sowing Circle. Isn't that cute? We sow seeds together and stuff. Anyway, I was in the midst of the sowing circle and I went to show them a tray of this experimental Bouplurm variety that I was growing. And I tilted the tray and guess what? I spilled about a cup of water right onto my laptop keyboard. It was great, y'all. So Suzanne's also doing a little CPR. She literally vacuumed my keyboard with a wet and dry vac. And it didn't even cut off or anything. So hopefully all is well. But that's the latest excitement, as if, temperatures in the teens with no snow here. And just forecast to be really frigid for the next 7 to 10 days isn't enough excitement. I had to practically toast my laptop, which I need for 2 more shows tonight, y'all. Anyway, we'll figure that out when we get there. So I don't know about you guys. So I'm in southeastern Virginia. We just are so grateful that we were only grazed by that big old snowstorm that came through. We only got about 1.5 inches or 2 inches of snow, followed by ice. We still have the ice here because the temperatures are so cold. We did get above freezing barely yesterday, and I was able to get some of the ice off of my row covers. But we are still really cold here. And I just want to report to everybody, and I'm so guilty of this too, y'all, terrified that my cool flowers are dead. And yesterday when I was getting the ice off of some of the covers, I just did what flower farmers really shouldn't do in January. I peeked under the row covers, y'all. That's the most terrifying thing you can do. And I just want to report that everything I saw, the snaps, the Omni Magus, the sweet peas, and what else did I look at? Oh, Billy Balls. Billy Balls, Craspedia, looked a little whipped. He's a little limp, but he'll be fine. He's not dead. But the Omni Green Mist, which I thought for sure would be whacked, was beautiful. So I'm so encouraged. And I just want to say, and I'm saying this to myself as well, trust the process. If you only plant in the fall those cool season hardy annuals that are winter hardy in your winter hardiness zone, and you plant them on time, which means they have time to get established before they go dormant for winter, they take ice and snow like a champ, y'all. Like a champ. And this test is, which I'm seeing this whole snowstorm thing, a real test for me. We just haven't had severe weather like this in so many years that I kind of forgot how bulletproof cool flowers are. So trust. And the other thing I want to say before I see we have some questions is this is a perfect example why we succession plant. So I fall plant all the things that are winter hardy in my 8A zone. Then I plant again in very early spring. All these seedlings you see behind me this is stock, and this is didiscus and straw flowers, and more stock, and godicia and more straw flowers. Eucalyptus, which is warm season, just a really slow grower. And a rudbeckia. These are all of my next succession of cool flowers that are planted during the very early spring window. What is very early spring? 6 to 8 weeks before your last average spring frost. I'm going to say it again. You should be planting transplants outside in the garden 6 to 8 weeks before your last average spring frost. You can plant, if you live in a place that has heavy snow load, maybe you can't get them in right at 6 to 8 weeks, but you can still plant them a heck of a lot sooner than you can any warm season tender annuals, right? So that's the next succession of cool flowers. And then we have our first warm and our second warm. That's why we succession plant, y'all. If all of my cool flowers were to be killed, which they never have, and I don't believe they ever will, I have this next planting coming along that's going to bail me out. Do not put all your eggs into one basket, y'all, is what that all says. All right, so if you're in TikTok, remember you can submit a question in the comments, put a question mark. If you're just joining us on Instagram, there's a bubble down below with a question mark in it. Post your questions. Go hit that bubble and post your question in there. And I will do my best to actually answer some of those. And also, friends, the best thing you can do for me to help me is to share this live right now on your feed and invite other people to come over. So let me just scroll over here on TikTok. I wish they had a bubble with a question mark. Oh, so Bethany asks, when should I start snaps in zone 6A? Okay, your zone only tells you what you can plant in the fall. Does not tell you when to plant or when to start anything. When you do it is based on your frost dates. So you need to know when is your last average spring frost, right? Count back 6 to 8 weeks, and then you need to have transplant ready on that date. So I'm sure that means you need to start now, right? And I did bring this in here, y'all. We still have available some of my big calendar journals. And y'all, right here, oh, this is not the right page. Wait a minute. This is not just a calendar, y'all. It includes my guide to guide you to exactly what you're asking me, Brittany. You will never have to ask again. Here it is. These big pages. Why are they so big? So you have room to write your stuff on it, y'all. This is my guide. These are the 9 planting windows that I guide you through based on your frost dates. Then you mark up your calendar for your planting dates. Then I give you a worksheet that comes with the calendar through this QR code that then guides you to figure out when you're supposed to start the seeds. Y'all, you will no longer be guessing. If you're on Instagram, you can comment calendar and we'll DM you the link. TikTok, just go over to my website, thegardenersworkshop.com. It's $39.95 plus shipping, and it will take all the question marks out from when do you plant. 9 different planting windows. So hopefully that'll help you. So hopefully, Brittany, it is Brittany, right? No, I'm sorry, Bethany. That's count back 6 to 8 weeks from your last spring frost, and then you start however many weeks it takes you to grow a transplant, right? But I'm telling you, You will not need to guess and wonder anymore. All right, let's see what else we have. I'm just going to look through the rest of these over here on TikTok. Okay, so let's get to these. Do you plant in the ground or in raised beds? Jen asked, I plant both. All of my beds, even out in the field, are raised about 4 to 6 inches. And then I have demonstration raised beds. So it does great in both, in all. All right, let's see what you got, Instagram. So Kathleen asks, they won't be killed by the last spring frost? So Kathleen, I highly recommend that you get my book that's called Cool Flowers. It's all about these annuals that are cool season hardy annuals. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with pansies, snapdragons, bells of Ireland, sweet peas, all of them. They don't just survive cool to cold weather. That's their secret sauce. That is their jam. And that book will help you wrap your head around the concept of that you need to plant these guys out in cool to cold weather to get established. Then they face heat if that comes, with much more robust growth and pest and disease resistance. So no, frost does not kill these guys. And again, Cool Flowers is the basic concept of, and I didn't make this up, y'all. Our grandmas and great-grandmas did this. I simply rekindled this practice from the past that we just kind of let go of decades ago. So Kathleen, that will help you to wrap your head around and understand my book, Cool Flowers. You can find it on my website. And when you buy it from us, there's also a video book study. We'd love to sign a book for you. But of course, the book is available everywhere. All right. Well, hello, Jackie. Jackie is one of my local friends. Our snapdragons, winter flowers. I remember when winter, my snapdragons had snow on them. I'm just wondering if it was just an early snow. So snapdragons are one of the hardier cool season hardy annuals. And in fact, funny enough, so mine out in the garden are looking so great. They have come through all this crazy weather. But I have some big containers up here, and there was one container that had some snaps in it, and I didn't cover it as a kind of test. They have gone through all this crazy snow, then ice. Snow and ice protects your cool season hardy annuals, y'all. It does not hurt them. But then they melted, and now they've just been going through frigid conditions, and that snapdragon plant looks amazingly healthy out there. So yes, Jackie, they love the winter and they love snow, and they do really, really well. So glad you're here. Kathleen, what's your best advice in growing ranunculus corms for the first time? When should they be planted, and will they bloom again in the fall? Kathleen, I cannot help you there because I do not, nor have I ever really grown ranunculus. So I have no experience whatsoever to actually, I was a 30-year veteran flower farmer, and we just did not go for what I call high investment crops. They are wonderful to grow, don't get me wrong, but it's a high investment to purchase them, to grow them right, to have them great to be able to sell, to get your money back. And we just never did that. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer that. I'm new to starting seeds, but I'm not new to starting seeds, but new to soil blocking. Welcome. I just started straw flowers and Sweet William. Put them on the cooling rack on top of the heat mat. Do I still use a dome over them to help them to germinate? That is a great question. So what she's asking, we don't typically use domes only because, there's nothing wrong with using domes, only because it's really easy to encourage disease if they trap too much moisture. Dampening off is a really frequent flyer. This is what we use. We use wide weave burlap, And see how big the holes are? And we lay that, we sow our seeds and we put them on the rack as you described. And then we just lay this on top of the blocks, and that traps moisture but allows air circulation and helps to prevent that. And then once you start seeing seeds cracking and showing signs of life, we remove the burlap because you don't want the seedling to pop through one of those holes or it'll rip it out when you pull it off. Every morning I pull the burlap back, water my seedlings that are, or my actually blocks that are on the heat mat. And then once 50% germinate, the burlap's off of them and they're coming over here to the actual grow lights. And so here's some of my straw flowers. These are bright pink. Aren't they beautiful? Aren't they beautiful? I love straw flowers. Are one of those just underused or under. Here's my sweet William. They're a little behind the straw flowers. They're just so beautiful. So that's what we do. Oh, I didn't. Wait a minute, y'all. I have so many buttons that I don't want to push to cut y'all off. All right. So Kathleen, you can watch the replay of this, but if you're talking about my answer about ranunculus, my answer is that I don't grow ranunculus. I haven't grown them, and I'm sorry I cannot help you there. Well, hello, Brittany. What should I do with an empty block that had no germination? Remove it or sow it again? I'm bummed about all the empty blocks taking up space. So I don't go, I've got empty blocks. So look at this. I mean, as long as they're well past germination. So this is didiscus, which is the slowest. It's almost as slow as eucalyptus. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, these empty blocks that are here, many of them now have, you don't think you can see. Yeah, you can. They're starting to sprout. Sometimes it just comes later. Don't ask me what this seedling got that block didn't get that's right next door. But not only that, I don't want to disrupt, like, here's a straw flower that just didn't have the greatest. It had decent, but not the greatest. I don't go pulling my blocks apart. Part of the moisture retention comes with them in their clusters. So I just leave them be, and they just grow on, and your neighbor will grow into them. So I would leave them alone is what I would do. I wouldn't go pulling my clusters apart, I guess is what I'm saying. When sowing large seeds, are there any varieties that prefer a certain side up? For example, scabby needs to germinate better when sown in small soil blocks, point down, tufts up. I mean, so I do have scabby here, and we had one. See, I've already used some of these seeds. See, I've stolen some off this tray. I had one that showed the seeds. You could see it really. I know y'all won't be able to see this, but in this block right here, y'all can't see that. You can see it just makes sense to push a seed down into the soil block. Scabby, zinnias, cosmos, marigolds. We just push the pointy end down into the block. And larger skinny seeds definitely go in the small block, but things like sunflowers, sweet peas, those go into the larger blocks. Like a zinnia could go either end. It's just easier to push it into the block with the pointiest end going in. So no, it does not really matter, in my experience anyway. It was a question, will the roots breathe? I'm not sure what, let me see if she had another question here that I didn't have. It is nonstop raining. My cool flower plants' roots will be able to breathe. It is not draining. So if you are concerned about water standing around your garden where your cool flowers are growing, that is definitely, yes, a problem. That is a great way for disease to be introduced, as well as roots, whether it's a seedling or out in your garden, need as much oxygen as they do moisture. and prolonged standing water around them will definitely not give them that. And then usually about couple 3 weeks later, sometimes you'll start seeing wilted plants and different things, and that's just diseases because of the standing water just really kind of coming in and taking over. It's like stagnant, you know. So the moral to this story, that's another thing that I love about our big calendar that I showed you, which is called a calendar journal, because y'all, you make pertinent notes on it. So you would definitely write wherever you decide to write these kind of notes on what I like to use Thursday and Friday on my calendar for specific things. And like Fridays could be that, like, don't plant cool flowers in this area. On your calendar for when you'll be preparing beds in the fall, perhaps. Or this area needs to have more aeration work done, you know, more compost and getting the soil open or cover cropping or something. Because excellent drainage is definitely needed for cool season hardy annuals. The soil just doesn't dry out naturally like they do in the summer. All right, so let's see. I'm looking back. Did she cut out for a moment, or was that issue in my end? Sorry, Jess. I'm just looking. So I'm in southeastern Virginia. So what are your best tips on lisianthus first year trying them? So Bethany, you don't say if you're getting plugs or you're starting seed. What happens to growers as they begin, or flower farmers as they begin to start their business up? I started them from seed for 2 or 3 years probably. But then I soon learned that it was much smarter for me to purchase plugs. Lisianthus takes 12 to 16 weeks to grow into a seedling about that big. There's a lot of ways for you to kill that seedling in that long a period. That's the whole problem. And they really require specific air temperatures. And so growing them, you know, in 70-degree air temperature, I think is what their perfect conditions are, because if they don't get their conditions, they grow as a little transplant. But when you plant them out in the garden, they do things that's called rosetting, and that is where it grows into this little robust plant, but they never grow stems with blooms. And that's all because they didn't get what they needed when they were seedlings. And that's why flower farmers, that's a very important crop. The seeds are not inexpensive, and we just found it is far more economical for us to purchase plugs. And Farmer Bailey, farmerbaileyplugs.com sells, if you're a gardener, they sell the Garden Club program, which you can get just a few plants, or more, but not as many as some of the bigger plug producers actually require. So that's all I got on lisianthus. We love it. It's a great crop. Bumping your seedlings to larger blocks, should these be made with potting soil versus seed starting? So we don't bump in general. All of these that you see growing up here will be planted out in the garden in that block, because we start, with the exception of eucalyptus, because, so this is my eucalyptus, and it is so slow. This was started, so these were started on the same day. Stock, eucalyptus, night and day difference, y'all. Every plant has its own deal. But eucalyptus, once it gets a little bit bigger, and you can't even see half of them because their little stems are burgundy, so they blend in. But we do bump up eucalyptus, we bump up tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant. Generally, that's all I bump. Everything else is started at the proper time that this little block will take them to the garden. Huge, huge labor saver, and it's just not necessary. So we don't bump. And if you do bump, we use the same soil blocking mix that we use for our small soil blocks, and that recipe is always on our website, and then we have big bags of the ready-made mix over on our website also. I'd like to grow multiple amaranths in one hole. When I go to sow these later in April, should I sow multiples in each soil block, or when planting put more plugs in these holes? So that's a great question. So first off, if you've grown amaranth before, it sounds like you have. If you're going to grow it close and tight to make it small, they're here in the South. They're huge bug magnets, like in cucumber beetles and flea beetles that will eat the rest of your farm to the ground. So we don't grow them here. I grew them for the Cut Flower Handbook. Beautiful, beautiful flowers and plants. But here on the Mid-Atlantic, they are tough to deal with. And one of the ways that you can deal with them is to plant them closer together and to pinch the heck out of them. But if I was going to do what you're talking about, which will also work, I'd probably put 2 or 3 seeds in a small block and plan on planting them when they're 3 to 4 weeks old, which means you do not want to start them much before your last frost date. And then plant them at the 6-inch spacing. And that way they'll be really tight. But what we do is plant one plant, 4 rows in 30-inch wide bed, 6 inches apart in the row. We pinch them, or we make the first central cut of that whopper stem, because we had somebody that would love those whopper stems. Cut those whopper stems, even though they were well over my head tall, all the way like this far from the ground, and that makes it just create gobs and gobs of usable size stems. So that'll work. What you're saying will work for sure. I didn't hit that button right. There we go. Will the roots breathe? So the roots cannot breathe when there's standing water around. Now let's look over here. All right. We are in southeastern Virginia. Somebody was asking. Just looking. How to grow a rudbeckia. So we grow all of the hardy annual varieties of rudbeckia, which is about 9 different ones. You can find them all over on our website, thegardenersworkshop.com. And they're a cool season hardy annual. We fall plant them and very early spring plant them. And we start them from seed, and some of them are strong reseeders, others aren't. But there are so many beautiful varieties to choose from. They're a huge pollinator plant. They're great for landscape and in the garden. And so you can find more about them over on our website, about specific varieties and what they look like, because they were just beautiful. So friends, I want to tell y'all, I told you how I poured water on my laptop during the sewing circle with my Flower Farmer private club. Membership is open right now. It'll only be open until Friday. If you're in Instagram, you can actually comment the word club. We have a 7-day free trial going on right now. If you're in TikTok, just head over to thegardenersworkshop.com. It's at the top of every page in the banner. And if you want to get in on my big calendar journal with the guide, it is a cut flower seed starting and planting guide. It will guide you to 9 different planting windows, y'all, based on your first and last frost dates. You kind of create your own custom planting guide, which then leads you backwards to the perfect seed starting schedule. And all of that is included. There's a seed starting worksheet. And in fact, on that same page that we send you to get the seed starting worksheet, there is a live workshop that's recorded in there for you to watch, of me walking you through how to figure out your 9 planting windows, and have some really special recommendations in there for you. So you can find all of that at thegardenersworkshop.com. And friends, I hope to see you in the club. The club is kind of like a day-to-day practical application of flower farming stuff. I do lots of resources for it. I do a monthly masterclass, a monthly Bloomcast, which is a private podcast. We have a private community board where I answer questions and other people are very supportive in there. We have the weekly sew-in circle, and then once a month I do the Flower Farmer Forum where we get together for a live Q&A, and I do a mini training. And I call it's the continuing education part of flower farming. And so it is just a really great support group for people that are trying to get their businesses started or up, and to offer that it's your people, right? So when you have a win or a struggle, you know that when you come in there, those people know what you're facing and what you're talking about. So it's what I dreamed of for years and years creating, and I love offering that. So check it out, thegardenersworkshop.com. Oh, there. Hi from a club member on vacation in Park City, Utah, before I come home to start sowing seeds. So hi, Sarah. Have fun out there in Utah. And yeah, go over to the sales page at gardenersworkshop.com and then scroll all the way to the bottom. There's reviews posted there by members, and would love to have you become a member. And the doors close midnight on Friday. And you can buy it by the month. You can join by the month, $19.95, or buy an annual membership, and you basically get 2 months free. All right, my friends, thanks for joining me. Try to stay warm. Remember to trust the process on your cool flowers. They are loving all this snow and ice and cold, even though we aren't, right? And remember, keep seed starting. And if you want to learn how, just the big calendar will guide you to succession plant, my friends. All right, till we meet again, my friends. Ciao.